Hey everyone, welcome back to the SwiftUI game development series using SpriteKit for iOS on Xcode. That's a mouthful. We're taking a look at BulletStorm 5.0 today. You can see we have this nice new splash screen. We also have an app icon that's been loaded. There are massive upgrades in this build. We also have a settings page where the user can actually select between some new ship colors and add some more customization to their game. They can save these settings that are persistent across app launches, and we can actually have them play the game as these new ship colors. Another amazing feature that we've added, leaderboards, tracking your highest scores, only displaying and keeping the highest 5. So you can screenshot this and brag to your friends about how amazing your times are. I only really had one good time on this one, 89 seconds. I promise the other ones are for testing, surely. So what's new in BulletStorm 5.0? Highscore system, keeping track of the top 5 scores. We've also added that settings menu, allowing the user to customize their ship with new animations, as well as a polish on the app icon and the loading screen. See, we have an app icon here. So if you're looking to add these features to your game, let's go ahead and dive on in. So really quickly, if you want to access the new sprites, they are available on my project assets on my GitHub pages in the description below, and there's also going to be a link to them as well. And if you want to follow along with the previous project, you can download the 4.0 AI and endscreen zip file, because that's what I'm going to be working on today, or feel free to add this logic and code to your own project. So let's go ahead and dive on in. So the first thing we're going to be adding is the high score save and display to the users. So we're going to be in our game scene, and what I'm going to do is right before our function of show game over screen, you don't have to necessarily add it in this exact same spot, but just include it where we have our other functions. This is where we're going to create a function called save game. We're going to be using UserDefaults for this one, but we'll also quickly explore SwiftData for our game settings. Totally up to you what you want to use. Both have their kind of pros. So we're going to do our save score, and this is going to be a new score that we're passing through, which is going to be an integer value. Then we're going to go ahead and say let defaults equal UserDefaults dot standard. This is going to make it a little bit easier for ourselves. Then create a variable called Highscores. And this is going to equal the defaults dot array for key of high scores. So this is what we're kind of saving this under in terms of like a file name or like a save name, right? And this is going to be as, and we're going to put this as a square bracket array of int, and we'll provide it with the fallback of an empty array. Then we're going to add the new scores and sort in the descending order. So we'll take our highscores.append, and we're going to go ahead and pass along that new score. Then the highscores.sort. We'll do this by, and we're going to use the greater than symbol. And then we'll keep only the top 5 scores. So if highscores.count is greater than 5, we're going to take the high scores, and it's going to equal an array of high scores with the dot prefix of 5. Then we're going to go ahead and hop out of this if statement, and we'll have our defaults dot set the high scores for the key of high scores. And make sure you have the exact same spelling as our variable up here. Then in our function of show game over screen, let's go ahead and call upon the function we just made of save score, and we're going to be passing along the score value into here. Then it's going to save it and only display the top 5 best ones. We also want to display this to the user, so let's go here after our menu button, still within the show game over screen, and we're going to create our defaults again. If you really want to save time, you can copy and paste it from our function above. That's why I kind of wanted to put them together. So let's go ahead and copy our logic from above, or you can type it out again. And this time we're now going to display those high scores. So we'll say for index, comma, score in high scores dot enumerated. Go ahead and add our brace here. We'll say let score label equals sk label node. We'll pass through the font name. Let's see, what one have we been doing? Avenir next dash bold. And then we'll have our score label dot text equal, let's go ahead and interpolate the index +1. So we're doing this because it's more readable for humans this way. If we don't do it, it's going to have our top score 0. This way, instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just makes a lot more sense. Oops, score text, not score apostrophe. That doesn't make any sense. And then we'll also pass through the score. And we'll say seconds. And we can add a little clock emoji too, why not? Then we'll update the score label dot font size. Have this equal 24. We can also do the font color. Make this dot white so it pops off the screen. And then we'll set the Z position. We'll put this to be 11, so it's always kind of in the front. Next, we'll take the score label dot position. And we can apply the similar logic we did above here. And again, if you want to save time, copy and paste. You know, we've already made a lot of this code, why not use it? This is going to equal the CG point. And we're going to do the X and Y value, and we're going to have the self.size.width be divided by 2 in order to put it in the center. And we'll do the same thing for the height, except we'll do the height divided by 2. And because we kind of want it to be a little bit more staggered and kind of appear lower on the screen, let's have it be -80. And then we're also going to minus the CG float. And we're going to look at to the parameters of the index. And we're going to multiply that by 30. So this will allow us to kind of stagger out those different scores. And then finally, outside of this, let's go ahead and add the child of the score label. Okay, so this should allow us to play our game and accumulate various scores. And then from there, we should be able to only see the top 5. So let's go ahead and run our app. All right, let's go ahead and test our high score feature. So we're going to go around here. We're going to make sure we can get a score of 6 seconds. Okay, wonderful. Let's go again, and let's try to earn a higher score. So then this way we're able to see if it does order them properly. So 7 seconds should be good. Let's get a really low score this time. Wonderful. So we have the 7 in first, second 6, and the second, and then third we have 2 seconds. And let's go ahead and make sure that it only displays 5 total scores here to the user, all in the proper order. Wonderful. We'll just run it one more time just to be safe. Okay, now we have a 7, 6, 5, 4, 2. So it is going to allow us to keep those scores in the high score in the correct order and only going to display 5 to the user. So we should be perfect and good to go. The thing we'll test out is that between the app launches, we'll make sure that those high scores are still being displayed and saved. There we go. Now the users can ensure that they can keep all their high scores and set a personal best or brag to their friends. Next, let's go ahead and create a really quick data model in order to handle the selected ship color. So if you wanted to use SwiftData for saving things, I'm going to show you the basic example of using SwiftData to have our selected ship color, but we can also just use UserDefaults. It's totally up to you, or as I'll show you in a second, we can actually use a little bit of a mix of both. So I'm going to create a new empty file here, and let's go ahead and call this one game settings. From here, we'll need to import SwiftData, and we'll also import foundation. We'll create a @model, and we'll call this one a class of game settings. In here, we're going to create a variable of our selected ship color. And this is going to be a string value. Because this class will need to initiate it, I'm just going to use the autofill, except for here where it has the string, I'm actually going to set this one to be silver, as that's one of our upcoming ship colors. We'll then want to go to our app file here. So mine's just called BulletStorm Revenge, whatever your app name is called. And we're going to also import SwiftData here. And under the structure, we're going to define a shared SwiftData model container. So we'll create a variable, and we'll call it shared model container. And this is going to conform to a model container. And it's going to equal a brace, can hit return, and we'll create a schema, which is going to equal the capital S schema of our game settings.self. Then we'll create a let container, which is going to equal the try of model container. And then from here, we're going to say for lowercase schema. We'll then return the container. And outside of these braces, we're going to add some empty brackets. After the content view, we're going to inject SwiftData by adding the model context of our shared model container. So this means whenever we load up that content view, we should be good to go. Oh, I'm sorry, not model context, the model container. There we go. All right, let's hop over to our content view because we're going to be navigating to our settings view. There's many different ways you can handle navigation towards the settings. In this case, we're tracking the Boolean value of what scene we're on. So let's go ahead and create a state private variable. And we'll call this one show settings. And we'll have it equal false off the bat. And because we're doing the kind of if-else statements to handle our views, before this else, let's create an else if show settings, add a bracket here, and we'll go to settings view, which we haven't made yet. And we're also going to want to pass along this show settings so we can actually get back with the binding variable. There's so many different ways to handle navigation. I kind of flip-flop on how I do it, but this should get us where we need to go. So we're going to say show settings and then our binding of show settings. But we will get an error because it can't find settings view in scope. And really quickly, let's go ahead and copy and paste our button that starts the game. And we'll paste another one down here. Instead of show game scenes, show settings equals true. And for our text, we'll say settings. And we'll make our background gray. So it's a little bit different. We can even copy and paste our animation down here and the value of the show settings instead. Because we can't find it in scope, let's go ahead and create it from a template, SwiftUI view, settings view. Within this settings, we're going to make sure that we're grabbing that binding variable that we are passing along. So we'll go ahead and start with that. So at binding with a capital B, var show settings, which is a Boolean value. And this is going to allow us to control the settings visibility. Because we're using a preview here, we're going to want to make sure that we're able to see it. So we'll do a at previewable at state, and it's not a private variable, and we'll call this one preview settings, and this is going to equal true. Then right before our settings view, let's go ahead and return the settings view, and we'll have to say show settings, and it's based off the preview settings we just created above. This will allow us to have that binding be available to us so we can see our changes in real time on the preview. Might take a second to load, so while that's loading up, let's go ahead and grab our at environment and also import SwiftData. Within the environment, we'll go ahead and have our /.model context, which is a private var model context. We've worked with SwiftData before. I'm sure you're used to kind of setting these things up. Create at query. This is where we'll be grabbing the private var of these settings. Now currently we only have one thing within our game settings, but this will allow you to be as modular and like save different and as many settings as you really want or need. And then we're going to create some other state private variables, and this one will be for our selected ship color, which is going to be a string value, and we'll set its default to be red. That is the OG color. And then we'll create a state private variable called ship scale, which is going to be a CG float. We'll have it equal 1.0. So we're going to be using this for an animation effect. So when the user selects their ship, it'll kind of grow and shrink really quickly. So something it's also suggesting is some selected difficulties, and you can even save those within the settings if you want to have the user do that there. You can create different game modes. Your game is totally up to you on how you want to handle it. But let's go ahead and create the user interface for the settings, and we're going to be doing this within a V stack. If you want to add a background with a Z stack, right, it's crazy with this as you want. So our text will say settings, and we'll set the font to be a large title. We can even add some padding. Then we'll prompt the user to select a ship color. Make this one headline. And we can add some padding off the top. Then we're going to display the selected ship with an animation. So we're going to go ahead and pass along the image. And from here, within the parameters, we're going to say ship underscore. And then we're going to interpolate the selected ship color. So why am I doing it like this? Well, in my assets, I'm going to be adding in some new ship colors I just really quickly made on Photoshop. So all of these have a similar naming convention. It's ship underscore and then the relative color. So I'm going to drag and drop these in, and you can grab these assets off my website or in the description below if you want to copy along. But this is going to allow us to interpolate the value in order to select the correct color. So we have purple, red, silver, and yellow. And we can display this to the user. So if we make this resizable, if we make it scaled to fit, okay, well that's a little bit large right now. Let's go ahead and add a frame with a width and a height. This is to be 200 by 200 perhaps. And then we'll add a scale effect, and this is going to be based off of the ship scale that we created above. And this will allow us to apply the animation effect. And speaking of which, let's add the animation. So I'm going to do a spring for this one, and I'm going to pass through a response. Let's try 0.4. as well as a damping fraction of 0.6. I don't need this kind of autofill body here. Instead, after the comma, I'm going to be basing it off of a value, which is the ship scale. Okay, and we want the user to be able to select their ship color. So I'm going to be doing mine through a picker. There's so many different ways to kind of have the user choose what they want. And we'll display this as the ship color. And we're going to do comma selection. And we're going to use our binding variables. We're going to use a $sign of the selected ship color. Then we're going to provide them with different options. So we'll use text to, easily display this to the user. And then we're going to use the dot tag in order to pass along the string that's going to go to the image that we're selecting. So in this case, the tag of red would fill in the image ship here. This instead would be red. So if we wanted to do purple next, I believe that's what we had. We had to double check. Purple, I believe it was, let's test my memory. Yellow, I hope that's right. And then silver. I mean, I did make them, to be fair, in Photoshop really quickly, but I should be able to remember what they're called. You know what? Double check. Purple, red, silver, yellow. Okay, good job, memory. But essentially, we're having these tags in order to update and change the color. Now, I personally do not like this kind of standard picker menu. I would rather go with a different picker style. So outside of this bracket, we'll do picker style. We'll do the segmented picker, but it's totally up to you. Now, something you'll notice is we can now instantly see these different ship sprites that we have. Do not judge my artistic ability or lack thereof, but we don't quite have our animation. So let's go ahead and add that now, and we'll be doing a dot on change of, and there's a couple different ways to do this, but I'm basically going to say, okay, on the change of this value of the selected ship color, I'm going to get rid of this action here. Instead of going to go outside the bracket and add my brace, I want a update ship color with a new value function to be running. We'll also want to ensure that we're passing the new value. So say new value in before this function that we've yet to create. So why don't we go ahead and create it? Before the very last bracket here and before our preview, we're going to create a new private variable. It'll be called update ship color. And from here, we're going to be passing along an underscore color, which is a string. We'll add our brace, and this is where we're going to increase the ship scale. So I'm going to pop this thing up to 1.5. We can try 1.3, but this is going to briefly enlarge the ship. And then we'll use a dispatch queue .main.async after, and we'll add a deadline. And we'll set this to be .now with empty parameters plus 0.2 seconds. After that bracket, we'll add a brace, and we'll set the ship scale back down to 1.0. Oh, why did I do private var? Private func. was like, that's a weird error. Okay, now we should be able to see this little pulsating effect. Wonderful. We can see our ship change. Something that we'll want to also do is save this selected color to SwiftData, and we'll also save it to UserDefaults, just so I can show you kind of both ways. So while still in this function, so make sure it's out of the dispatch queue here, we'll say if settings dot is empty. We'll go ahead and populate it with our new settings. So let new settings equal game settings. We'll pass along the selected ship color with the color as well. And then we'll have our model context.insert model of new settings. Outside of that, we'll create an else for settings dot first question mark dot selected ship color equals color. So this should save our selected color to SwiftData and still within the function, but right outside the else. Let's go ahead and update our UserDefaults dot standard dot set, and we're going to do the color for the key of selected ship color. Okay, and let's also create a function here to save and return. So private func save and return. Nothing within the parameters, and we're going to be using a task for this one. So we'll add a do first, and we'll say try model context dot save, and this should save any changes to SwiftData. Afterwards, we'll add our catch for any of those pesky errors. We're going to go ahead and print those to the console. Fail to save, and we'll go ahead and interpolate the error. After that catch, we'll have our show settings equals false, which will allow us to return to that content view. We need a way to call upon this, so let's go ahead and add a button. Let's do it after our dot on change. We'll add a space or two just to create a little bit more room for the user. We can add a button, an action, and that would be save and return, I think is what we called it. Yes, it is indeed. And we can add our text and other style here. So save and return. I'm just gonna add some like arbitrary style and some padding. And set the frame to be max width. Ooh. Have our max width dot infinity. Our background, let's make it blue. And we can also set our foreground style to be white. We get some padding, we can add some horizontal and some padding from the bottom as well. Alrighty, we should be good to go. Now nothing will happen in this preview because we need to be accessing it from the content view, but before we do test these out, let's go over to our game scene and let's update the user's ship based off of the color that they've selected. So in our function of setting up the player, what I would honestly suggest doing is doing a command F and looking up where we established that setup player. For me, it's on the line 148. I don't feel like looking for that, so I'm just going to use the command F. This is where we can have the selected color. So when we're dealing with this, we can either grab the information from SwiftData, or we can just use UserDefaults. We'll have it equal the UserDefaults dot standard dot string for key, and that was our selected ship color. We'll also want to provide it with a fallback. In this case, we'll just make it red, and then we'll let the ship image name equal the ship underscore, and then we'll go ahead and interpolate our selected color. And now when we populate the player.texture, this is where we can have it be the SK texture image named, and we're just going to go ahead and pass through the ship image name. So this is going to load the correct ship texture for the user. If you'd rather use SwiftData for any of these customization options, we'll first need to go to the top of our file and import SwiftData. Then let's go down here and do our @environment. We'll do our /.model context private var model context. This is going to access the SwiftData context, and then we'll use our @query private var to look at the settings, which would be that game settings that we've created before. Then in our function of setting up the player, probably a good idea to Command F this one. Here we go, and they're setting up the player. Instead of using the user defaults, we would have the selected color equal the settings dot first question mark dot selected ship color. We'll provide it with the default value again of red. This is going to fetch that information from SwiftData instead. One more change we'd have to do is in our override function of didMoveTo. Again, definitely recommend searching for this. We're going to need to handle the case to ensure that these settings exist before we handle them. So we can say if settings dot is empty, let new settings equal game settings. We'll have our model context dot insert model of new settings. We'll have our try question mark model context dot save. So it's up to you if you want to use SwiftData, if you want to use user defaults. SwiftData is a little bit more modern and robust, as well as it's very easy to add cloud integration with SwiftData. So if you want to ensure that the user's data syncs across multiple devices, that might be the way to go. Both are very easy to use. I think user defaults a little bit easier, but you can do more with SwiftData. So it's totally up to you. Before we launch our app, let's also update the app icon. You can create a custom one. Otherwise, I'm just going to drag and drop the one I created with AI in here, as well as our splash screen for our background. So if we want to create a loading screen, we can create a new file from template in Xcode, and we'll select the launch screen. You can rename it if you want. I'll just leave mine as launch screen. I'm going to go ahead and add our image of our splash to the background here in our storyboard. So scale it up some, add our constraints. This looks fine to me. Yeah, I could make this look a lot nicer, but you know, good enough. And in our info of our target here, we're going to go ahead and add the launch screen interface file base name, and we'll just reference the launch screen that we just created. Alright, let's go ahead and run this program and see if our changes are there, that the saving works, that we can select the different files, that we can select the different colors of the ship, that we have our launch screen. It might load a little bit quickly because we've already ran this app, but we should be able to see our app icon on the phone screen here. It's initializing, it's thinking about it. There's our BulletStorm Revenge. Looks pretty cool. Let's go ahead and go to our settings. We have our default color of red. Let's set it to be yellow. Let's save and return. Go ahead and start our game. And we're the yellow ship. That is awesome. You can see we still have our leaderboard. Go back to the main menu. Things are working as intended. Let's double check the app icon. Perfect. The only problem is we're defaulting back to red. Oh no. Let's go ahead and quickly fix this in our settings view. And after our VStack here, I'm a little bit lost. I'm just going to double click on here. After our VStack, we're going to do a dot on up here. And instead of the brackets, we're going to add a brace. And we're going to load the saved ship color when the settings first appear on the screen. So we can do this by the selected ship color equaling the settings dot first question mark dot selected ship color, and we'll provide a fallback. And it's actually suggesting that we provide the fallback of the user defaults, which you can do, or you can just make it red. It's totally up to you. Both of these should work. So let's go ahead and run our application one more time, and we should be able to have that be saved in our settings of what ship we wanted to use. So we'll go to our settings, and we can see here that it did load up purple right away. We'll save and return, settings again. There's our purple. Amazing. So this is how we can do this menu through settings. You can also, while you're playing the game, use user defaults, use SwiftData in order to augment these changes on the fly. So something you might want to experiment with is in the game menu itself, You might want to add some toggles to where you can enable or disable the game sound, the background music, things like that. But essentially, in our settings, providing the user with a way to select different options. In this case, we just used a picker with the text and the tags. We're able to pass that tag along to the image. And then we're also able to pass this tag or the string value along to our game scene. And when we're establishing the texture, we were grabbing it from UserDefaults. You can also use SwiftData for this. For the image name, we're passing that ship image name along. So we're allowed to select the color, the sprite, right? You might want to have different skins in your game. Maybe you have some themed ones. Alrighty, we can see that for BulletStorm 5.0, we have our nice little AI generated art that I have here. You might want to make your own, or commission an artist. Even use AI if you really want to. Alright, we can see that we have our nice little ship with the different colors. Let's go ahead and do the purple ship, save and return. We'll start our game, and we have our new custom purple ship in the game. I was also doing some testing, and I have a nice new high score that I'm proud of. So just as a recap of what we've accomplished today, we've added a new high score system that's local to the user, and it will allow them to track their progress. We've also added the customization of the player ship, providing them with more options, as well as being able to integrate that into our actual gameplay. We added really quickly an app icon as well as a launch screen. If you are curious on some more information covering either of those concepts, I have dedicated videos on my channel teaching you how to create the launch screens, as well as adding app icons to your project. But that's pretty much as far as we're taking this project for now. There are some more future upgrades we can do, and this project itself has a lot of improvements that you can make before putting your own creation on the App Store. Of course, always take any templates that I provide, add your own twists and ideas to them. Something you might want to add is a scaling difficulty, or allowing users to choose the difficulty, adding more enemy types, more power-ups. I think next time we revisit this, we'll either look to add scaling difficulty or some leaderboards using the game center. You can also add things like achievements. It's actually quite easy to do. The only limitation for that one is I believe you need a Swift developer account. I have one, but there's some features that I forget are a requirement, and I don't want to have anybody feel ostracized if possible. Oh, 114 seconds. Okay, new record for me. Look at that scoreboard. 114.89, 14.66. Those other ones were certainly just me playing around and testing with things, right? And clearly decent. Anyways, there's so much you can do with this game, so stay tuned to see if we do make a follow-up video on this. Otherwise, this has been BulletStorm Revenge 5.0. If you are interested, any of the builds that I do on my channel are available on my Swift GitHub pages. I've also started making some Python videos, so if you are interested in learning a new coding language or learning how to combine them in the future, definitely check those out. Otherwise, BulletStorm Revenge 5.0 is feeling pretty sleek, and if you are working on a game, please let me know in the comments below what you're working on, and if there's a specific feature that you're burning to see, maybe we can make a follow-up video with BulletStorm 6.0. Otherwise, dream big, code bigger, and have an amazing day.